I'd like to call this meeting of the Region 12 Board of Education to order. This is our public district budget hearing. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Call this hearing to order. I'll read the notice of public budget hearing. Notice is hereby given to all those entitled to vote in town meetings in the towns of Bridgewater, Roxbury, and Washington that a public hearing will be held on Monday, April 7, 2014 at 7 o'clock p.m. in the library of the Chippewa Valley Middle High School, 159 South Street, Washington, Connecticut, to present the annual budget for the year 2014-2015, prepared by the Regional Board of Education for Chippewa Valley Regional School District 12, copies of which will be available at the public meeting. Chippewa Valley Regional School District 12, Bridgewater, Roxbury, Washington, by James Hirschfield, Chairman, Board of Education, Washington Depot, CTO 6794. So that's the notice of the meeting. I'll now turn the meeting over, I'll ask our treasurer, Valerie Anderson, to give us an overview of the budget process and where we're at. Valerie?
Okay, good evening. Thanks for coming out. The board adopted this budget at the last meeting, but we certainly are interested in your comments and your questions. By way of overview, background, before February, the superintendent and the business manager, Bob Geeson, had a series of meetings and invited the finance board finance committee, of which I'm chair, to attend and see per administrator what their needs were for the next fiscal year. So we were able to have good conversations with the individual department heads and administrators. And then the superintendent, with the help of the business manager, made changes as they believed fit. And the initial budget showed an increase of 1.95%. Then the superintendent reduced that budget, so then we were considering last week a budget increase of 0.54% increase. Then our conversation last week and the budget that we adopted actually shows a decrease of 0.20%, and that is the budget we're looking at tonight. Basically, I would ask you to, if you have a copy of the budget, the big headlines here are that we do have a decreasing population, and indeed, the Finance Committee, at the beginning of each of these sessions, asks for what is our population? What are we actually looking at per school? And stay with me for a moment so I can grab my notes, which I don't have in front of me, but they are in the back of the budget we have in hand, in which each school population was assessed, and that kind of determines the need. Basically, the big changes can be found in the back of the budget in what we call the 700s program changes. I will give you the page in a moment, please. That would be page 9. Property and program improvements. We certainly can go over the budget object item by object item. We have in our budget, and the Finance Committee reviews on a monthly basis each of the big categories of the budget to see that we're on track. But the big changes in this budget would be located on page 9, 700 property and program improvements, in which we see capital technology, capital facilities, and program improvements or change. And basically, the capital facilities, we had an adjustment in that last week, which is the basis of our decreased budget. We moved $160,000 repair and replacement of the heating system at Washington Primary out of our operating budget to a fund that has been established for the elementary schools. That's a $160,000 line item that was moved out of the operating budget. There was significant conversation and a motion was made but defeated about the lower items, 750 program improvement with Burnham kindergarten teacher and elementary intervention and remedial tutors being decreased, the total subtotal reductions of $216,000 in basic FTE staffing, FTE is full-time equivalent. It doesn't necessarily mean bodies, but it means teaching time. But in this particular case, there was significant conversation about the need for a kindergarten teacher at Burnham, with only 4 children now signed up, one of which is a staff member child. So the superintendent deemed it appropriate to take that position out. And it wasn't so much cost savings, though that is important, but it was also whether it was a good educational decision that she made. So that basically the only change in this budget, there are changes per object code, we can get into that, but the significant, overwhelming changes are that we will be decreasing staffing, and we will be making some changes in our capital facilities, but it will be funded from a fund that we already have available money to allot. So that is the budget, 0.2% decrease. And that is the budget that the board has now accepted, and we hope the public will come to the polls and agree with us.
All right, thank you. I guess I can now open the floor to questions or statements by any member of the public. If you would just go to the podium, state your name and where you're from, what town, you have the floor. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Do you use this thing?
Yes, please.
You can hear me?
No, not that, just the podium.
All right. I do have a couple of questions that I would like to ask. One of them has to do with the $100,000 that's moved to the elementary CNR fund. Every year, there's $100,000 put in that fund. I don't know, I can't see how much money is in there. Is there some place in the budget where I can see how much money is in that fund?
We had a reconciliation of $508,000 before we started the budget process.
I mean, I read the budget. Is it in the budget someplace?
Just told you, it's $508,000.
Is it show $508,000 someplace here?
Hold on, let's find it for you.
I mean, I just don't know. I see where you take the $100,000 out every year, but I don't see where, what's in, I see the bonds, I see, but I don't know where the place is.
Mr.
I
Wainwright,
don't know the
that's
answer
not
to that.
actually the funds. We have many funds, and the funds are not part of the operating budget.
Ah,
The
so it's not in
allocations
the
are, but we
budget.
have a reconciliation, I'll get it for you.
Oh, that's good, that's good. You tell me that there's $508,000 in that?
Was, until we made $160,000 allocation out of it in the last meeting.
This is an accumulative fund, is that right?
Correct. It basically we
I
call it the
mean,
lease,
you're not supposed to spend that fund every year,
when need be.
okay?
For the elementary schools only, it's part of our lease package, our lease agreement.
Okay, on page 9, you mentioned that there's a staff reduction. One of them is elementary intervention and remedial tutors, 1.15 FTEs. Where are these people coming from? Are they, what school are they coming from?
Pat?
Are they coming from Burnham? Are they coming from Booth? Are they coming from
All right, the
WPA?
superintendent will try to answer your question.
At this point, we have not officially allocated where they're coming from. We need to wait until Mrs. O'Hara is done with all of the PPTs in the district. At that point, we will...
So you don't know?
Well, no. And we will put together the needs in each school. I can tell you that we are not losing those positions. We are reallocating responsibilities of some staff members that are already in our schools to do some of those jobs.
These could be from the elementary school or the middle school or the high school, is that right?
There are no interventionists or tutors at the middle and the high school, so they would be definitely from the elementary schools.
Okay. Well, I have a question related to that. Your previous job was a high school principal, as I understand.
Mr. Wainwright?
You're not picking
I don't want
on the elementary schools, are you?
Come on.
Well, I will respond to that. Last year, when I presented my budget, I looked more carefully at the middle high school, and when I changed the schedule, we were able to share and reduce the staff in the middle high school. This year, I focused more on the elementary schools with the input from the administrators, and we focused more on the elementary schools.
Okay, I have one statement to make. It's related to something I read in the paper today. It said that the superintendent stated that there are 4 kindergarten students from Bridgewater attending, and they could attend the Roxbury School, but the parents would have to provide the transportation. That's what it said in the paper, and I assume you stand by that. My issue is, for many years in the past, we have provided transportation when the student class of one school is lower and we put them to another school. We did it from Bridgewater to Roxbury, and we've done it from Roxbury to Bridgewater, and we provided the transportation for them.
I'm not sure about that. It has been
I
done.
can guarantee you that. I can give you witnesses to that. We'll be glad to have Jay Kronfeld, whose son was transported to Bridgewater, come up and talk to you about that. Or we can have Elliot Woolwich come up, whose daughter went from Bridgewater, went to school
Okay.
in Beget. If you don't believe me, I'll be glad to.
I didn't say I don't believe you, I just said I wasn't sure.
I noticed in the budget, there is an item in the budget, it's a line item 512. It states transportation in district project. Now, my understanding is, this budget item is $148,000. My
It says.
understanding is, this is to provide transportation to students that go to private school who live in the region and go to private school in the region. People that are sending their children to private school in the region and live in the region get funds from this to provide transportation. It's hard for me to believe we pay for private school transportation in the region and not for students who attend public school in the region. That's hard for me to believe.
If I might, it's called a state statute. You have hit my favorite subject of all times, object item 512. We've watched this item increase and increase, and I've fought it every step of the way, because indeed you are correct. However, it is a state statute, and unless we get our legislators to change that, we are beholden to transport and I think subsidize private school children and parents in the region.
No, that's
Agree
not my point.
completely.
Yes, but Valerie-
But your point is.
That's not my point. My point is you need to provide transportation for the public school students who may be better for them to go to school in a kindergarten in Roxbury. That's my point. That's inconsistent. Now, how much money does it cost to provide that? Do you know that? Do you know how much money it costs to provide for the 4 children to be transported?
Yes, go ahead.
Let me just clarify, what my quote in the paper was correct, what you said. We are going to have a K-5 school in both Booth-Free and Burnham.
I asked you.
We are not taking those 4 children and putting them at Booth-Free. We are allowing any parent who would like them to be in a kindergarten-only class to transport them to Booth-Free. We will offer that. But based on our attorney's advice, it is illegal for us not to have a K-5 school in each town at this time due to the regionalization plan. So although it may have been done in the past, it cannot be done now the way things stand. So that's where we're at.
So we don't know what it costs.
To send the 4 students to Roxbury? No. I mean, what is it gonna cost?
You don't know.
We don't.
So this is a legal problem.
I'm
This
sure
is not a-
I'm sure that
a
our
cost
business manager
constraint
would know
problem.
if he was here.
Pardon
He's not
me?
here. Our business manager is not here. He would probably know.
Well, is it possible to get an answer to that?
It's
Well,
beside
Come
the
on,
point.
it's 4
It's
kids
beside the
across the
point.
town.
Pardon me?
It's beside the point because
No,
of.
it is exactly the
No,
point.
by virtue of
All right.
by virtue of the case of Bridgewater versus Region 12, we can't run a program at Booth Free School for Bridgewater students. Thank you very much, but
So
that's
this
the
is a
very-
policy on the board's point of view.
No, it's the litigation that was brought in the past.
All right, okay, please.
The league-
Mr.
the
Wainwright,
lawyers
do you
are
have
running
anything
our
else or you
school.
done?
I
All
have
right,
that
thank you.
reconciliation if you'd like.
Is there anyone else?
Jim, I have the reconciliation of that fund if he just wants to know the exact balance.
Yes, please.
We had 600,000 in the lease fund, that's 6 years' worth of $100,000 payments. And there were allocations made out of it of 42,000 in fiscal year 12-13, 51,000 out of fiscal year 13-14 for repairs to the elementary school, leaving us with, prior to this last allocation, $507,060.99.
Can you send me that so I can
That's
see what
160.
changes are happening and what?
That reconciliation was the
Okay,
last
sir, thank you.
meeting.
You want to speak to somebody after the meeting? Anyone else? Announcements?
Carolyn Dwyer from Bridgewater. I hadn't planned to speak, but I just wanted to hope that the board has done the research on the interventionist issue. I know Mr. Brown spoke of that last time, and I know some of you are new to the board, but I really do hope that the history is taken into account when you go to make these staffing decisions, because there is a long history there, and if anyone would like it, I'm happy to refresh. Also, I guess, to pick up on Ed's theme about,
I wish you would.
I won't be that controversial. But one of the things I'm seeing hasn't really been discussed, and I think a lot of you do remember this because it was a short time ago, is the whole notion of multi-age teaching. Now, if we are moving to a multi-age structure within our region, I think we need to really flush this out, because it doesn't just affect the 4 children we love to put out there all the time and, mention. It's going to affect everyone. So we need to decide educationally if that is the best thing and that's where the region's headed. If not, then it would make sense to me that we would do something like have a referendum. We have one coming up, and we could, if this one does not pass, and I have said it will not, that we could revisit that, and these kids could be moved around for the fall, and then they would have transportation, and Mr. Wainwright's questions would be moot. So,
All right,
thank you.
thank you.
Jim,
Yes, Peter.
that would be an actual possibility if the referendum fails.
Yes,
The board would have that option, if the referendum goes down, to do that,
board can do whatever it thinks is best, yes.
correct?
You'd have to have another referendum.
Yeah,
Yes.
right, yeah. But it's doable if the referendum fails.
Yes, in theory, yes. Sure.
Jim?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Wainwright, I just sent you that information you requested. It's on your computer.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else? All right, hearing no one, then I'll close this hearing. And I'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you all very much. And we'll go right to our regular Board of Ed meeting.
No,
Yeah?
no, this is a special meeting now.
Sorry.
You have it?
Do we
Yes.
have to vote on approving the budget?
That's what
We
we're doing
did.
right now,
We
special
did.
meeting.
No.
All right. I'll call this special meeting of the Board of Education to order, April 7th, 2014. Take attendance. Susan, would you take attendance, please?
Sure. Valerie Anderson. I am here. Tony Bedini. Alan Brown.
Yes.
Gregory Kava. Michelle Zora. Here. Emily Hubbard. Here. James Hirschfield.
Yes.
Kelly Lott.
Oh, that's right.
Jennifer
That's
Pudi.
what I just said.
Michael
Didn't I just say
Sinatra. Absent. I am here. Peter Tagley.
Here.
All right, thank you, so Mrs. Michael and Kelly. Okay, item 2, discussion of the 2014-15 budget. Yeah.
Move we approve the district's budget for the year 2014-15 as presented and set a date for a district meeting for May 5, 2014, a possible referendum date for May 6, 2014.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? It's unanimous. Motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. All right. Can I go to the next meeting?
You don't need to ask, sure. Did we get it?
She's gonna go get him right now.
Oh, okay. We have.
Did I wait?
So
Well,
we're gonna do
You
attendance.
can, if you want to do attendance, go to consent agenda and then go back to the middle school, you can do that.
All right, fine. All right, so we'll move on to the regular business meeting of the Board of Education, April 7, 2014. Susan? Yeah.
One more time. Valerie Anderson. Still here. Tony Bedini.
Yes.
Alan Brown.
Yes.
Gregory Kava.
Here.
Michelle Gora. Here. Emily Hibbard. Here. James Hirschfield. Kelly Lott. Jennifer Pudi. Here. Michael Sinatra. Still absent. I am still here. Peter Tagley.
Here.
All right, so it's just Michael, thank you. Alan?
I'd like to move to add a topic to the agenda.
What's that?
It is a discussion and possible action. Have you heard anything?
Yes, I, okay, yeah, it is.
Discussion and possible action on changing the last day of school to June 18th this year.
Second.
Any further discussion? This is to amend the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed? Abstain.
So that'll go under new business?
Yeah.
Or-
8.4.
8.4.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, we're not ready for that, obviously.
Well, here they come.
come.
Well, let's go to item 3, consent agendas. Is there to remove anything from the consent agenda?
Who's coming?
No, then the consent agenda is approved.
We expect him.
I have no report tonight, I don't believe.
Number 2? Oh, music ensemble. Hairspray, all right.
So our
Are
next
they
item,
putting
back
on a
to item
play?
2, middle school musical ensemble, Hairspray, Beth Harbison.
They're on their way.
Oh, they're practicing for a musical?
Hopefully they're coming closer.
I'm just kidding.
Well, that was delightful, thank you very much.
Are there tickets at the door? They sell tickets at the door?
They sell tickets at the door, I'm sure, yes.
Yes, if there's no ticket, you can just make a donation. It's free, you just make a donation.
All right, well, yes, Michelle?
I just wanted to say that I'm so excited, and Mrs. Harbison's doing a fantastic job. And there are, I think, 54 students, which I think I have to look at the numbers, but represents over 25% of the entire middle school is in that show, which is just fabulous. It's so exciting to see such great participation, and there are boys in it too. So it's just really exciting. Sure, it's okay if they're wearing a dress. They're still a boy. It's fun. Yeah. So.
Okay, good.
What?
Yes, all right, move on to superintendent's report.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out of order. 5.4.
Yes.
5.4, I'm just, we're gonna do next meeting on April 21st. I put it on the wrong agenda, the vision and mission. And then we do have a resignation of Linda Tanis. So that's one resignation we have. I do want to remind you, tomorrow at 10 a.m. is the Academy's Expo here at Chappaq. And that is the science and technology program here, and the students are presenting, and the winner will go and represent us at the expo at the Convention Center in Hartford. So if you are available, everyone certainly is. Where is it? it's here in the lobby, and then it moves into the auditorium. So we're really excited about that. And then I said Hairspray is Thursday. And I wanted to, we invited the selectmen to come tonight. Many of them have meetings, so I only see, I see Curtis and I see Dennis from Bridgewater. And I know maybe some of you spoke to your selectmen. I know Mark Lyon was going to try to get here, but he had a finance meeting, so we'll see. I also gave you last week a correspondence from our attorney about the tuition, so I just wanted whoever, if you want to talk about it, or
Do you have it?
you want this? You want to see this? This is in
Communication
regard to decreasing the tuition rates for incoming students who live outside of the district, and also possibly renegotiating with Sherman. And as I said, although our attorney feels that the board has every right to make that cost whatever they feel is appropriate, if you are going to recruit or publicize more than anything we do now, which is really next to nothing, you really should send it to policy and really get some policies in line in the things that he spoke about.
All right, well, Pat got a communication from Gary Brochu. Let's see, March 25, I'm sorry. Pat, we spoke earlier today concerning the admission of non-resident students to Region 12 on a tuition basis. During this conversation, we discussed a number of policy and practical issues that would be created by such a policy and practice. If the board decides it wishes to proceed with the practice of allowing non-resident students to attend Region 12 schools on a tuition basis, I strongly encourage the boards to first adopt a policy outlining the guidelines and requirements for this practice. I do not know if the Region 12 board currently has a policy concerning tuition for non-resident students, so I cannot comment on whether or not the board's existing policy is appropriate or adequate. And then it says such a policy should encompass a number of issues, some of which are listed below. 7 items. And this was circulated to all of us. So, with that said, I mean, we did just say that we were going to push this item to this meeting, I guess, so we don't have to do it now, all right? So you've received this communication.
From the selectmen being that they, we invited them to their...
All right, well, then maybe it's appropriate to hear from them, yes.
I was just going to say that I was, that email from Gary implies that we're starting to tuition and never have, and he doesn't know whether we have a policy. We do have a policy, I think it's 3420, of course the policy server is down, it always seems to be during our meetings. But we do have a policy, and it's a very slender policy, and it's also something we've been practicing it. It seems to me you're talking about...
No, I understand that, that's true.
You're talking about promotion, and you're talking about marketing and all this, but that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the very existence of it at all. So clearly, there's marketing and promotion, but
Well, yeah,
I don't
okay.
understand what his...
He's just saying there should be a policy. If there is a policy,
that addresses these
Okay.
issues.
you know, so, right, well, that's the question the board's going to have to decide. Is do you want to follow this information he's given us, this advice he's given us, or do you think it's what we have is sufficient? That'll be the question. Peter?
Well, I guess the reason for the policy is to protect the...
I don't have the policy in front of me that I was referring to.
You have-
Yeah, 324, yeah.
I believe, Mr. Chairman, if we're just lowering the cost, then we can continue as we have. But if we are planning on putting it on brochures and advertising,
Right, different games.
we have to be very careful because that's the piece he's talking about. That's the piece he's talking about.
Okay, well, I haven't heard that being brought up, quite frankly. Alan?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead, somebody else.
Kelly.
I'm a little uncomfortable that our attorney is rendering an opinion and he hasn't figured out whether we have a policy or not, or has he read the policy that we apparently do have, before he gives us advice that we're no doubt paying for. So that's a little awkward to me. I'd like us to be a little more prudent than that, and again, if we're just talking about changing the price to start with, it seems a simple thing. Anything related to policy we can work on later and adjust our present policy. But
Okay. Anything else, Michelle?
Yeah, I have the policy right here, and he may or may not have read it, but it really just, it's about 3 sentences. All it says is that the Board of Education may permit students from other school districts to attend our school when they can be accommodated. Students or their sending districts shall pay a tuition fee to be established by the board. The tuition fee may be adjusted as changes in costs indicate, unless a multiple year agreement has been provided. Notice shall be given at least 1 month prior. So what is not included in this policy is anything regarding special needs of students. And this is sort of a can of worms that we have alluded to and have talked about a little bit, but I'm uncomfortable. I think we need to talk about this because I don't know what is legal and what is not. We can't discriminate, but we don't also want to put out there this, rock bottom price so that the districts around us start encouraging their special needs students to come to it. I mean, the price tag on a special needs student can go up to $100,000 or more depending on what their needs are. And I don't know that we're allowed to discriminate. I don't know if we're allowed to charge the parent for additional fees. I don't know what the laws are about that, but I don't want to open that can of worms unless we fully understand the exposure we're putting ourselves to. Right now, the tuition is set at very close to the cost. Is it at 90% of the cost? 90%. So most things, some small needs are covered. It's closer. It's just sort of something that I think we should answer before we just throw out there a really low price.
Alan, if I may, let me just, the part that I didn't read of his email when he said, such a policy should encompass a number of issues, some of which are listed below. And it's just advising us to put in writing, the admission of such students is typically left at the discretion of the superintendent of schools. Specifically note that a student's enrollment is for 1 year, with the superintendent having the discretion to extend the student's enrollment from year to year. Special education issues should be specifically addressed, including responsibility for special education costs. Responsibility for transportation should be addressed. Yes, so I don't know that a policy review of this wouldn't be a good thing.
Why don't we do 2 things? First off, we have Ally sitting here. She knows something a
Yes,
little
we
bit
should
about,
let the people be heard, yes.
about the special ed needs and requirements by law. But also, why don't we have the policy committee draw up policy or renew the policy we have, and then maybe some legal beagles that are on the board, i.e. Greg and yourself, actually develop what could be a contract that the our attorney can then review. I think we're kind of waffling around here, and I think we need to, if we're going to proceed, present something specific that we can present to people who are interested in tuitioning in their kids. And if the attorney says, based on what we produce and show him, that that's not good, that's not legal, then we're not going to pursue. But we need something.
Well, if you're making a motion, I mean, Alan, go ahead.
I mean, I guess I can't figure out. I mean, I guess it's a good point, but what I don't understand is that we tuition kids in already. So whether there's 1 or 500 kids tuitioning in, I don't understand why now all of a sudden the policy is an issue. Because if we don't have a policy now, we're liable for all these things that you suggest are necessary.
Well, no, it's not. The relationship is not clearly spelled out. Apparently, I'm not sure.
Right, but we have the condition where we can accept
Yes, we are
kids
doing
out of
it.
the region, and we're doing it right now.
Yes.
So for some reason that wasn't
Limited.
that wasn't a horrifying thing for the board of the region, but now
We have one, according
It
to the
is.
superintendent.
One.
person, yes.
So when I first brought this up, the issue is, oh, this is not going to attract anybody, or except people who are dissatisfied where they are, and we don't want those people. Now all of a sudden, it's going to attract so many people, we need to spend a
No,
quarter
that was
writing
never the
policy.
objection. The objection was we wanted to proceed slowly. We wanted to be sure we were on solid ground. It was a big item to just reduce at the first time you brought it up, and so it was deferred.
Yeah,
And
well-
so we want to make sure that we get it right. I think everybody supports it. If it can help, well-guided, it could be work. It could, broad range. And so that's the issue. It's not whether it's necessarily a bad issue. It's just that it needs to be done properly. Greg?
I was going to echo that, because I think the reason really is, if you're going to charge $17,000 a student, and that's more than most of the other schools cost to educate their students, then you've got to break on the incentive to send people here. You offer a bargain basement price that's less than it costs them to run their school, and they have every incentive to send every discipline problem, every difficult situation. I'm not talking about special needs students. I'm talking about students that you might prefer remained where they were. And so you really can't embark into a bargain basement price situation without trying to figure out how exactly we're going to manage it and how we're going to do it in a way that doesn't give us those ill things. The other thing is, if it were just me, you're not going to transport these people here. They're going to have to transport themselves. This isn't going to solve any problems. This isn't going to bring in hundreds of students to solve the missing student dilemma we have. If it brings in a few, it might be a good thing, but it's not likely to bring in very many, and it could bring in exactly the type we don't necessarily
You
want.
would have to see about that, of course. Peter?
Well, we started this, I think, in the 90s, and one of the aspects of doing this and who we did it with was that there was a cultural similarity in who we invited in. When you open the doors, you open yourself to every viable culture there is in the state of Connecticut. And I'm not sure it would be very easy to fit in some cultures into this system. And so we have to be, and if you're going to have a policy, that means anybody from anywhere in the state within a mile radius where they can get here in 45, 50, 60 minutes may want to be in the school. And you can't discriminate.
Well, it says,
And I think that
this
we
policy
do.
says it's subject to the approval of the superintendent.
And under what basis is she going to deny someone the right to use our educational system?
Yes, just based on her judgment, I mean. I don't know that
Oh, I
it's-
don't think that would. I think you'd have to check that out, really, Jim. I think, look, I
Okay.
certainly want to have as many students in the
All right,
building
so
as
yes,
we
you're
can.
opening up, let's say, to anyone, yes.
Right.
Let's just say that's true.
Right, so,
What's the risk, I guess, is the question.
a cultural risk.
Phyllis?
To address something Mr. Cava briefly mentioned, I don't believe it's true that a school system that has students they want to send out or get rid of or pack away can have any chance of actually doing that. The people who would be coming here as tuition-in students would be people who would be withdrawn by their parents from the school that they're attending, and they would be enrolling here just as they would in any other private school or religious school or any other alternative school. There's no way that a select number of students could be sent from one of our neighboring towns to us without a lot of legal hassle for that town that might be wanting to send just a few people. They also can't discriminate, and they're not going to be able to just ship people off wantonly that they don't want to have in their school system. That won't happen. We can't do it either.
Anyone else?
Well,
No.
I mean, we keep talking about it. I think it's a great idea. Even if we just attract a few people, sometimes some of those high school kids could really enhance our AP. And it's always good to have a mix of kids. As long as, and it is indeed, if we make it attractive, other kids from other school systems, there's a lot of turmoil around, not the least of which here, but for instance, Region 6 is thinking of maybe or maybe not merging with Litchfield. Maybe we could, get some kids tuitioning in, great kids, We certainly can't discriminate, and nor should we. And I think it's worth developing a program to encourage tuitioning in, but protecting ourselves from the beginning. I don't know where you go with this other than to designate someone or some people to be in charge of developing a policy, developing a contract, having it reviewed by council, then presented to the board for a vote.
Well, the hope was, I think, to have this effective for the prices that begin this fall. Is that right?
Yeah, we could.
Okay.
We have.
Well, that would be the goal, I guess, if it can be done. It should be able to be done.
I think Michelle should be in charge of it all.
All right, well, I want to, we have Mr.
Yeah, it's
Reed,
good
I
to
know is
find out
here.
from,
If you want to be heard, sir, I'm sorry to keep you waiting so long. Do you want to be heard, Mr. Reed?
Anything to say?
Mr. Reed, I'm sorry, do you want to be heard? I know you've been waiting here.
On this particular issue?
On any issue that you're here for.
Sure.
I think we,
Oh,
just in regards to this, we have other subjects that he's here for.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry. Something else on the agenda?
Discussing now or any?
No, I think it's just a tuition question.
sorry, I'm sorry. That's going to have to wait, right, a
Since
little
the
while.
towns get the tuition money.
Dennis, sorry.
Dennis McDonald, Bridgewater, Chairman of the Board of Finance. I don't have any issues with reducing the pricing, as long as that we know that pricing has been the barrier, okay, for students not coming to school. It's very easy to lower a price. It's very difficult to raise a price. And before you begin and say reducing the price is the solution, I think we all need to understand, is that why we are not currently attracting students like we had in the past? And I would just make sure, or ask, if there's some research done of students that are not coming here that we think would potentially come, and what the reason is they are not. Price may not be the issue. It may just be the lack of knowledge that they can come, okay? Or that there's a campaign out there to attract these people.
Or the lack of need of the district in the past
Yeah.
to have people come, a lot of people.
Yeah, but in years past, there are Sherman kids and a lot of children
Yes.
would come, much more than we have today.
Right.
And is price a barrier for them not coming now?
Okay, well, we have, I don't know if our guidance people have done anything like that, but they would be the ones who might have done something like that. Todd Dyer, perhaps. Should ask him. Thank you. Anyone else? Huh?
Ally, give us a little perspective on this.
Ally? Ally?
I guess just,
I'm sorry, would you come up? Would you- Thank you.
I think this would take a lot of research into this. I worry a lot about a variety of things you talk about, particularly students that we say, come on in, pay tuition, and then midway through the year, we feel like we can't take care of them. Do you send them back to their district, or do you then pay for an outplacement? How do you get around that? How do you get around, we talked last time about a variety of multi-year contracts. What if you start not special ed, end up special ed, and need an outplacement? I just think this is a variety of different concerns that come up. I also think if dropping the price so that the masses can come, or obviously the Chippewa, I think we have a very good reputation, so I think people that are unhappy with something that's happening in their school may come here. Are we prepared for that type of challenge of certain students? Will we need to be contracting with other consultants, behavioral consultants? Things that we do very rarely now. I just have a lot of concerns with, and I think it needs to be investigated much more closely, because I think once you take somebody in, we become their nexus. And once that student can't be cared for here anymore, how do we send them back to where they came from? Because I think they're ours, per their IEP. So I just think there's a lot of questions that we need to get a lot of clarification on.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ally? Michelle?
I was just going to say that I'm all for attracting more students to our district, but I do have some of those concerns, and I think that we can put this right onto our policy agenda. I can look at any CAPE policies to see what other districts have done, and any of the questions that have come up tonight, we can ask, about the legality of how we either accept or don't accept students, and once they're here, the responsibility, the breadth of that responsibility to our school district. And so I think the policy committee can take that on.
Peter?
Well, just two things. One, I had spoken to Sherman before I got elected to the board, and price was not an issue. The issue was that the sporting program in New Milford, which is a much more competitive sporting program, if kids were trying to get into college on an athletic scholarship, they did not come here, they went to New Milford. A significant amount of the population in Sherman lived on the New Fairfield side. It was more convenient for parents to drive their children to New Fairfield. There was nothing that was wrong with us at all. That was not an issue with the administrator I spoke to. It was merely a matter of they had declining students. The travel time here was an issue, and there were little things, but money was never an issue. The other thing, what do you want to accomplish tonight on this issue? Do you have something you want to accomplish?
Well, there's been a suggestion by Michelle, the chairman of the policy committee, to take this into policy, which I think is a good idea. If there was a motion made, we could do that, or we don't necessarily need a motion. If we just want to decide to do that, to put it into policy, I don't think we need a motion to do that. We can just, Tony?
Well, I believe that a lot of the regions around, or rather the schools around, are having the same sort of problem that we are, and that they have a declining population. So I don't think that we're going to see this huge influx of people just running here to try to fill up. If I thought for a moment that by doing this we could solve our population problem, it might really be worth taking a serious look. But look at it from the standpoint of the taxpayer out there who's saying, we pay $24,000 or whatever it is per student, and you're letting somebody in here for, I don't know, whatever it's going to be, $15,000 or whatever the number happens to be.
The proposal was $6,500.
Okay, whatever that number is.
60%, it's about 10,000.
I mean, how do we explain that one? I think that would be one thing that I'm surprised that a lot of selectmen wouldn't be saying, you know, this is crazy. My office is going to be inundated with this business about how come we're doing this sort of thing. I mean, the numbers, our budget, luckily this year it hasn't gone up, but I mean, the way the world is, everything costs more.
Yeah.
And so to be doing bargain basement tuitioning is, I don't see it.
Okay.
All right, well, I'll just say, I'll make a motion to have the policy committee take up this and iron out policy according to statute and all of the possible issues regarding it.
Second.
Nice, moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Now, that said, I just wanted to speak to Tony. And I think I said this last week, 2 weeks ago. I think perhaps everywhere, but certainly in our region, the people who use the school system, in other words, the students in the school system, are a tiny percentage of the taxpayer base. So even though we talk a lot about the per pupil cost, that per pupil cost is never borne by any particular resident, unless that resident has a huge estate, in which case they're probably paying a lot more anyway. So you have your property taxes that are a certain number, and if you have a huge estate and you pay, you know, $100,000, $200,000 a year in property taxes, and you have a child, then you're paying a lot for that child's education. If you have 12 children, you're paying less. If you have a tiny little house, you're paying a tiny amount of taxes, and you can educate all 6 of your kids for that amount of taxes. So I don't think the selectmen are going to have that kind of one-on-one response to this, because the actual parents of these people tuitioning their kids in, are literally paying what I was suggesting was around $10,000 per child, whereas our taxpayers are not literally paying that much per child. So I appreciate all of the other issues involved in policy and in some of the reasons that we need to make sure we're not opening the floodgates to something that we're afraid of, or at least have our fears put to rest. But I don't think that we're going to have anything but help in terms of more money coming into the system with the tuition. The only thing is, of course, and we've talked about this, is that we are getting a certain amount of money into the system from our few Sherman students, and that money would go down, perhaps, because we'd have to renegotiate with them, because we're going to be charging them more than we're charging anybody else here. So, there.
Okay, all right, it's been moved and seconded. Anything else?
Yes.
Donna?
I don't know if I follow Alan's logic. It's very creative as usual. But I certainly can kind of understand his point. I also understand absolutely what Tony is saying. But I think the board has also, besides all the responsibilities we have that were put on us by the long-range planning process, is try to develop a way to enhance and to increase the amount of the education here and the population. And I think we as a board should do what we can to take a look at the facts. And if our lawyer thinks we are setting ourselves up for real liability, if indeed the cost of getting these kids, whatever trickle there is not worth the risk, if the numbers don't work, if the law doesn't work, then we'll vote on it and we'll say no. But I think we should, at this point, it's our charge to try somehow or another to entice people to come to Region 12. And I will support the motion because I'd like to see where it's going to lead us.
All right, very good. Anything else? Peter?
One final comment. If you build a 21st educational system, modernized to the T, that has the future embedded in its model, people will find you. They'll hear about you and they'll find you. The board's goal should be to take this structure and bring it into the 21st century. You do that, and people will find you.
Jim?
All right, thank you.
Mark just walked in. Maybe we can get his
Okay,
opinion
yes.
before we vote.
Yes. Hello, Mr. Lyon. Are you prepared to speak to the board?
What do you want to talk about? I just spent 2.5 hours with the Board of Finance.
You must be ready for Lyon. Well, we were discussing this issue with regard to a possible drop in the tuition for non-resident students, non-regional students.
Yep.
To attend this. And I was wondering, did you have any thoughts on it? Do you want to be heard on that at all? The motion before the board is to refer that to its policy committee for review and a recommendation back to the board. You have anything to add to that?
That would be a good idea.
Okay. Anything else? All
Well,
those in favor?
if I
Yeah.
might, I mean, the towns get the tuition. We know
Right.
what it costs now to educate a child versus what we might really heavily discount to encourage tuition in. That's your money. That's our cost.
My understanding is that the tuition is credited to our bill in so many words. And currently, that is not a large amount of money. The idea of lowering tuition to attract students to fill our classrooms is a double-edged sword. You're going to potentially be able to provide a better educational atmosphere with reasonably sized classes. Are we going to get into a situation where it's going to start costing us because we're going to have to increase staff? I don't know where that tipping point is. But we don't cover the cost of our education with the tuition we charge now. So if we cover less of it, how big a difference does it make on a $24 or $25 million budget? So, I mean, if you had an instance where all of a sudden you were going to have 50 fifth graders come in and you had to hire staff, you'd be shooting yourself in the foot at that point. But I don't know what kind of numbers you expect to generate by charging whatever, $1,000 a year. But if for the few students that I think you will attract, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't see where it's going to make a significant difference in the big picture.
Thank you.
All right. Well, the motion before the board is to refer to its committee. Is there anything else? Greg?
Yeah, the one thing I'd be interested in finding out, I recognize there's not an enormous amount of money here at stake with vis-a-vis Sherman, but if all you did, if you cut this fee basically not quite in half, but by 60%, and you attracted no one else, and all you did basically was cut 60% out of the couple of $100,000 a year we get from Sherman, would that be something that the selectmen would be pleased with? I mean, if that ends up being the result, don't you think that's the question we really need to ask? Because it's like Ford Motor Company saying, we're gonna cut the cost of cars in half to all of the fleet rental agencies that buy from us, in the hopes that we will get China to put its nascent rental industry at our disposal, and they get not one car order from China. Now all they've done is made Hertz, Avis, and all those other people thrilled, and they've shot themselves in the process. They've cut their fees, and so that until you know that there's a demand, and until you know you're going to fill it in fairly significant numbers, you've got to make sure you aren't giving away all of that income and taking it off the table. It seems to me that that's a budgetary concern.
All right, well, these arguments are, okay.
That's why it has to be looked at.
The motion is to examine it, to have it examined. Is there anything further? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to 5.4, we're done with that? All right. Give me your reports, Alan. Communications Committee, anything?
Oh, yeah, we met, we're reviewing the draft. We're going to the printer much earlier than usual for the newsletter. And we're way ahead of schedule. Looking good.
Good, thank you. Anything else? Okay, Michelle, Education Committee?
Nothing to report.
Okay, the Education Committee agenda is posted at the end of the agenda then.
Yes.
Facilities, Greg, anything?
We have not met in April, and probably will not meet in April.
Okay. Finance, Valerie, anything?
We have worked very hard on the budget, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And met privately, or not privately, I'm sorry, but in smaller groups to help develop the budget, and then we presented it in a quasi-expert way. So we didn't have a meeting, but we worked hard. And to answer Greg's question on the budget, you do indeed see $156,000 of tuition non-resident students, so you have a point.
Okay. Negotiations, Greg, any questions for Valerie? Greg, I'm sorry.
No, negotiations, as you know, we have concluded our negotiations with the teachers. We have signed a contract, I believe, and it has not been objected to, and it is now the contract for the next 3 years. We will next commence negotiations with the nurses this fall.
This fall, all right. Policies and bylaws, Michelle? Yes, Greg?
Might be sooner than the fall, but I'm not sure because we haven't set on dates yet.
If I might,
Yes?
I know that's very difficult to go through these negotiations, especially with a block as large and as important as the teachers. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Policies and bylaws, Michelle?
We did not meet this month, but we do have a new policy on the agenda for tonight that we will be reviewing. And I was going to say that we've received back from CADE rewrites of the policies that were flagged in our audit as needing updates, and we were going to start working on those. But I think we'll be working on tuition first. So that's what we'll be working on next.
All right, thank you, Michelle. All right, that's it for committee reports. There's no old business before us, all right? Moving on to 8, new business. First reading policy 6142.101, student nutrition and physical activity.
All right.
Student wellness policy.
So this was emailed to everyone, so if you could find your copy and pull that out, that would be helpful. I just want to point out before we get started, we did just revise this policy in December of 2013 because it was before our wellness committee, and it was revised based on some updates. But we received a letter from a concerned parent about food in the classroom and specifically pertaining to allergies, but the conversation in the policy committee went beyond that. So even though we just revised this, we brought this policy back because this is where those concerns are best addressed. And you can see on the first page, the only new language is number 3. And that for those who don't have a policy in front of you, I'll just read that statement because that's the only new part of this policy. So number 3, it says, celebrations are an important part of school culture, especially at the elementary level. We will recognize student birthday celebrations, holidays, and other significant learning landmarks. However, food will not be a part of those celebrations. In addition, no food or candy will be distributed by staff to students. To promote a healthier school environment, classroom teachers will provide parents with ideas for celebrations that do not include food. Some curricular or event-based exceptions may receive administrative approval. So to give you some background with the conversation that we had, we talked a lot about students who have allergies and how it is very difficult for them when things are brought into the classroom, whether it's cupcakes or whatever it is, to celebrate something, and they are excluded and have to sit away from the tables because depending on the severity of their allergy. We also talked about the fact that that's actually not in line with our health and wellness part, and then we also talked about the fact that especially at the elementary level, parents make many food choices and would like to have more control over those food choices, whether that's being vegetarian or vegan or only organic foods. You know, lots of choices that parents make, and when other people feed their children, they lose control over that. So those were some of the concerns that we talked about. The allergies, students with food allergies, it's been in the newspaper recently. There have been some other school districts moving in this direction because of liability issues when things are brought into the classroom and we're not, and there was a food allergy problem. So, so that is one piece. The other piece, the other reason this was sort of came before the board is, I guess we have different policies in different buildings, because this is actually the policy that has been in place for years at Washington Primary School. So, and
This coming with Gail Brody?
Gail started
Okay.
that, and Emily has continued that. And the parent that had an issue was not at Washington Primary, in one of the other schools. So as the administrators and the nurses were talking, they realized there were different policies in place. So we felt that it was best to come to the board and make a universal policy so that our schools were operating all together. So the language was put together after the policy meeting. So the administrators and the school nurses were involved in this because the school nurses are in charge of keeping track of everyone's allergies and have a lot to do with food. And then one more thing that I'll mention, and then we'll open up for discussion. But that last sentence, some curricular or event-based exceptions may receive administrative approval. Some people were concerned that things like ice cream socials for the entire school could not happen, and things like that could happen as long as the administration has approval, is apprised of what's going to be happening ahead of time, so that they can discuss with the nurse, and the nurses can make sure that there's alternative food available. For example, you know, for an ice cream social, they might also have popsicles for students who have dairy allergies. The nurses know what would need to be made available, so they could work with the school to make sure that everyone can participate, because we don't want to exclude anyone, and they can also make sure that nothing is being served that would exclude a child, would make the child have to leave the room, because some things like peanut allergies, you know, they're very sensitive, and so something containing peanuts probably could not be there. So as long as the administration has advance notice of food being served, there can be events that include food, but
Be up to the administrator.
it's up to the administration, and they would need a time to make sure that the nurse is able to review it. So that was that, and I guess then if we want to discuss this, that's sort of a summary.
Motion to approve for first reading,
Yes.
Greg?
I'll move that we approve this policy for first reading.
Hold on, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Susan, second?
I want to congratulate the policy committee for dealing in a very, very, I want to say a very sensitive way with a very difficult issue. And I think that what you've done is you've managed to create a policy that's flexible enough that it doesn't, it isn't so ironclad that it makes it impossible to do things, but on the other hand, is sensitive to the needs of the students involved. I personally am not sure that we really want to encourage a lot of food-centric activities like this. And I think that this is probably a good policy all told, but I think the fact that there's flexibility, for me, is the thing that makes it very easy to swallow, for want of a better term.
Yes, Jen?
Does it also include PTO run events? I mean, did that have to get approval by the administration for that as well?
That would need approval by the administration. So any school
Any food
event.
in the school?
Any
Yeah.
form of schools? I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if it was
Yeah,
different
so-
after school, that's all.
I don't
So
think
like if
so.
there's
Well, if it
a
would
PTO running
apply-
event after school,
Especially
then-
if the entire student body is involved, I
It
would
says
think.
food will not be part of those celebrations. So this only applies to those celebrations.
I think it would-
Birthdays, holidays, and other significant learning landmarks. Food will not be part of those celebrations. And no candy will be distributed, so. All right, well, there's a motion on the, all right.
Your PTO
I
meeting
just
food
wanna-
is still sacrosanct, you still can have it.
because I'm just, because
Yes,
there
I
are
think you would
events
still have, be able to
that.
have your PTO meetings. I don't think that would
No,
violate.
not meetings.
no,
No,
no.
they're talking about
PTO
events.
events
I
that
think
incorporate-
I think the idea was that because the ice cream socials were brought up, and those are often PTO sponsored,
Right.
and
That's the event-based exception.
That's it.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
just-
So
But it would have to be in
that would need
concert
to
with
go
the administrator.
to the administration so that whatever's being served can, I would imagine just a couple days' notice is
Yeah.
fine, just so they can make sure that it's reviewed with the nurse and there's nothing being served that would exclude, because there are two things here. There's one, the exclusion of students, which we don't want to exclude anyone, but then there's also the liability of the school and anything that's happening with the school if something is there that is
Or is it just during school day?
an allergen to some child. So,
I understand, because I guess for me, as I think about certain PTO events, of course, it's probably because I'm not family fun night kick, decorate your own cupcakes, that kind of deal, that's a really big hit. And so, and make your own candy necklaces. So I'm just thinking about,
Okay, all right.
this is clearly not something I'm very much attached to.
That's an event.
So for me, making sure that there's
This is, I
still
think, is intended to apply during the school day.
during the school day. So I'm just saying that, but but I don't know that, so that's what I'm
well,
concerned about.
I would make sure you talk to your administrator.
Because I'm not really upset.
Well, talk to your administrator. That could be an exception.
It's included for a first reading, we can look into the, ask the
Well, and-
superintendent to look into it and speak to
And,
her.
After the
and
26th.
after, we might need to tweak, I would propose that we put this language in place.
We pass
and-
it for a first reading, get it in, and then you can do whatever you want.
Right, but
It's fine.
even, I'm just saying down the road, live with it for 6 months. The administrators might come back to us and say, you know what, this needs
Sure, it will rarely apply, I
clarification.
would assume.
No,
Basically,
Jim,
to cut
it will
down.
be applied a lot.
No,
Oh,
no, no,
okay.
It will be applied a lot.
All right, all right.
So I think
All right, hold
once
on.
we
There's
live
a motion on the
with it,
floor to approve this for a first reading with the new paragraph 3.
I think
In
that was
red.
recognized a while back.
All right, I'm sorry, Valerie. Go ahead, Valerie.
I think it's crazy. I'm so sick and tired of PC. I mean, I'm sorry, but some of the joy of a child is to have a little celebration of one's birthday. And I know we have to be sensitive, but I mean, if a parent asks the teacher, and if the teacher is aware that there are no outstanding food allergies in a particular classroom, to say that kindergartner or that first grader can't have a little celebration of a birthday or Christmas. A pizza party, I don't know, other schools are bringing pizza to school at lunchtime. Sometimes I'm assuming they do it at festive times.
This is talking about
at festive
celebrations.
times. Celebrations /
holiday.
festive times. That means
Bringing
food.
pizza in for lunch is,
Food.
unless it was for a party.
harvest parties,
Well, yes, if it was for one of these celebrations, then yes, they have
I
a right
will
to cut it off.
definitely vote against this. I'll go to my grave supporting cupcakes for birthdays if the teacher allows it in her own discretion, knowing the population and the health needs
Of
in that
course,
class.
of course. All right, Michelle.
2 comments. One, when it says administrative approval, it's not the teacher. So it actually needs to go to the principal, who's gonna work on that with the nurse to make that approval. The other thing is the nurses gave us at the policy committee, and I'm sorry, I probably should have made a copy, but there's this handout, Healthy School Celebrations, and it talks about all sorts of different ways.
What if you're allergic to carrot sticks?
Well, the nurse would know that, and you would
All right,
have to
come
do
on.
grapes.
We've got a
but-
motion to approve for first reading before the board.
But she had a question, and I think it's fair enough. Valerie, I just wanted you to know.
Yes.
WPS has been doing this since my kids were there, and we handed out pencils and balloons and, party favors, and they wear a birthday hat and they sing. They love it. I
Poor
think
children.
I think
Poor
the
children.
children will survive.
Poor thin children.
We're Washington dentists.
They won't see it.
Is there anything else on the motion?
The only thing that comes to my mind is, Burnham does this cultures around the world, and sometimes food is a part of learning. We talk about the curriculum.
We need to hear from everyone.
That'll be the exception.
If administrators are against this policy, we should hear from them. Is there anything else?
Moving on.
All right. It's been moved to approve this policy. I'm sorry, 6142.101 for first reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Me.
Two, Kelly? Okay.
Wait, 2 against it?
2.
Any abstain? It passes for first reading. It is, it presents interesting issues.
It's sad.
Okay. 8.2, to consider if appropriate approve amendment to lease agreement, 1% elementary capital fund. Are we prepared to go forward on that, Greg?
I'm really not prepared to go forward. I mean, we've got two selectmen here tonight who might, first selectman here tonight, who might let us know whether or not they have a position on it, but I haven't heard back from anybody after our meeting where we discussed it, but I'd be happy to discuss with the board what the proposal is, should anyone have any questions.
All right, Mr. Reed, do you want to be heard on that issue with the lease? Please. This is, the issue is the committee that's supposed to go through. I heard from one of the first selectmen who told me that what she would like to see is just to have the board's facilities chairman meet with the first selectman and go through their building. And that's it. She doesn't need a committee, she doesn't need a panel, just take them through the building.
But do we change the lease?
That's not what the lease
language?
says now. Mr. Reed, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Thank you for hearing my thoughts. We met.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Go ahead.
Oh, that's all right. We met with Greg and Pat, 3 selectmen, Don, and we discussed how this process takes place. And typically what had happened was the selectmen were supposed to get together, have a meeting, get a tour of the facilities, all of them in each town, and then make up a list for repairs. And you've been setting aside approximately $100,000 a year for the primary school repairs. Right now, that account has a little more than $500,000 in it, and I think 200 and change is spoken for as of now. So there's, going to be 300 or 280 left in that account. I'm new, as you know. I haven't had a chance to walk through all these buildings. I did talk to Don at the time, and he had a list that was more recent of repairs that they felt were necessary. And I think the story was that it was kind of unworkable, and the way it was, because Barbara Henry didn't want to be crawling around in basements and things like that, and I understand that. And she was willing to appoint somebody. And I think Mark and myself and Barbara all felt like, yes, it would be good to catch up, because it's been 2 or 3 years that we'd like to have a tour at some point. I think the proposal that Greg wrote, which is this 8.2 subject, the amendment to the plan, is that...
Amendment to the lease.
Amendment to the lease is that Don would come up with a list, they would inform us, and tell us what's going on, and then I guess they would decide. The school board, the facilities manager, the superintendent would decide the priorities. Is that correct?
No, that's actually the way it was supposed to work is that instead of the current system where the committee gets together and they actually have to meet and decide on a list that would then be presented to the board, and if no one, and if the group didn't meet or didn't come up with a list, then the superintendent would create the list and present it to the board. That's the current system. The way this system was intended to work is that Don would basically take the old master list and toss it, because a lot of it's been done, and he would start a new master list. He would bring it to the selectmen, seek their input. You'd have a period of time within which to either say we agree with it or we don't agree with it, or we think you ought to do this. The idea was to get input, and then if that produced something that everyone could live with, then it would be moved on to the board for consideration. But if it didn't, then we'd be back in the old position where people couldn't agree. If the three selectmen couldn't agree and we couldn't get a list that everyone agreed on, then the superintendent would have to make a decision of what went forward. So it was basically, instead of having a formal meeting, it was to go out and get your input individually, so that we didn't have to have that formal meeting. Seemed to be the problem. We couldn't get everyone together.
I think that's a good point, and I don't think we disagree with that. And I think, from my point of view, I think since the towns own the buildings, they should, in a sense, have some say in whether certain repairs get done or prioritize them, that it's not entirely up to the lessee, but it might be up somewhat to the lessor a little more formally. And I think that would, since they are our buildings, that would give me a comfort level that the things that were proposed to be done on a fair basis between our towns, and we all agree that there may be repairs, for instance, that are more important, that may happen, $150,000 for Booth Free and $30,000 for Burnham that year. But in the long run, everything would try to balance out, and I think the three selectmen agree that that type of thing would happen. We don't need any specific formula, but I don't know how Mark feels, but Barbara has expressed it that, you know, we're just concerned that we have no say in the matter. Yes, it's nice to be presented a list, walk through and say thank you very much, and then what are we, window dressing? And I think that you know, we should have some serious input to these buildings, or some sense of, you know, do we agree, and if we don't, what happens? And I don't think that's clarified in this amendment. So that's my concern with it.
Jim, could I answer that? Just because the one difficulty we had this discussion, which you weren't part of because it was before your tenure on the board when we negotiated the leases about 4 years ago. 4 or 5 years ago, we had this discussion. One of the problems we have is we have limits on what we can do, and one thing we can't do as a Board of Education is to offload the decision over how schools are operated and what repairs and what things are done and the condition of them to anyone else, even the owner of the school. We're required to, I mean, we aren't here to represent the towns. By law, we represent the state. I mean, we are here to act as the agent of the state, and so we're constrained, and that's the reason why we couldn't give a formal, you can make the decision. I mean, I believe the lease says that if you want to make a repair to a building, that you can make that repair. But as far as the expenditure of public education funds for it, we can't. We have to make the final decision, the board does. We can't, we can't
well, you're making
delegate that.
Well, I'm not so sure that's entirely true. All I think that for the future, I think it would make sense to have it be an agreement of the school facilities manager and the selectmen that they agree that these repairs, and chances are 99% of the time we would take their advice, and you know, they know best. But on the other hand, you know, there is some local control. That's all I'm suggesting. And I don't know how it would play out in Bridgewater at this point. If something changed, I don't know. I think that, you know, but that's my concern, and I just wanted to register that.
I mean, I must say, my understanding has always been the the board's building committees or facilities committee has always taken the input of selectmen, certainly. If we heard from your predecessor and the other selectmen that there was a significant item in the school or that particular item in the school, the board was there. I mean, they were always trying to make the selectmen happy. I think that's a reason, that I don't know of any significant disagreements. If I'm wrong, that's fine. So I just wanted to say that. It's not that the board is not trying to cooperate.
Right. I think the only other minor piece of advice I'd give is having 300,000 sit in the bank when there probably are a backlog of repairs, and it was 500, seems kind of nuts to me. I would think you'd want to be spending that money and keeping the schools up.
All right, well,
if
then
it's needed, and there is a big list, so that's just another comment.
Okay, thank you. Anything for Mr. Did you have anything for Mr. Reed?
No,
Okay.
but on the subject.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Valerie?
Well, then, what are our next steps? Are we given a new wording that the board can look at so that it gives us that latitude? So that when we do see a need for a repair, we can access that fund? Or, I mean, I would assume that's what we need to do. We all, 24, 25 drafts of that document. And so it's a legal document, it's a legal contract, so we need to vote on the amendment or the change in wording, and then the selectmen have to.
Well-
So that frees us.
But I don't think there's anything to vote on, because we're still basically negotiating it. I mean, we met with the selectmen to try to see if a concept would work. The reason why we drafted the language is because the concept has got details that need to be ironed out. So I drafted it, we had it passed by our council, who reviewed it, made a few changes, and then it was brought to the selectmen to see if they agreed with the concept. We're not trying to rewrite the lease. We're not trying to change them. All we were trying to do was substitute a formal committee meeting that we could never seem to get together with a formal solicitation of input.
So what we need
That was
here
really the only
is-
change.
What we need here is the actual wording. I have nothing in front of me, so I don't know. Was something distributed?
Okay, all right, so, but you weren't seeking to have the amendment passed
I wasn't
tonight?
seeking
All
to
right,
have.
so
it
we're having a
passed.
report on it.
Yeah, we really don't have any, I was a
But
little
hold
bit,
on. But
the reason I
before the
didn't
board
bring
would
it-
be asked to do that, and it would have to do that, it would have to have the language in front of it, so.
we would actually have to negotiate some language
Oh,
to
do it.
get to a point of having something that we could recommend to the board. We presented an idea to the selectmen to
All right.
solve the problem.
Let's do
They
it.
haven't responded other than what we heard tonight now. Thank goodness for that, so we got some response.
So the lease committee is back in business.
What's that?
More or less.
Okay, just a minute.
And can I add something to that, Jim, real quickly? It's a matter of form
Yes.
of, hold on, I'm struggling with my Google here. It's on the agenda, it's improperly discussed. It says to consider and appropriate approve amendment to lease agreement 1% elementary capital fund. This is not the 1% fund.
Okay.
This is the elementary, non-recurring capital fund.
That's correct.
True. Major distinction there.
Okay, thank you for that. Alan?
I just want to address the impetus for this, which was that the committee was difficult to assemble. I'm thinking that what we need to do is to just try harder in the near future to reassemble that committee, because it was set up so that at least $100,000 of work would be done each year on the schools. And the reason there's a committee was so that the selectmen, as representing the owners of the buildings, could have some input as to what the jobs would be that year. And the reason it's a committee is not just so that a selectman can walk into his or her school and say, wow, these drapes are hideous, but so that each selectman, and this was the painful part, and that's why I think we need to work a little harder on it. Each selectman would join with the others or their representatives and tour all 3 schools, so that each selectman would not only know about their own school, but about the other 2 schools as well. So that when it came down to it, as they decided about how to spend the $100,000 with the board, one selectman would say, my furnace is in trouble. The other selectman would say, well, the paint hasn't happened in this building forever. Well, how are we going to do this? And then they would decide, having seen each other's buildings, what the needs were, and come to an agreement. So not only was it a way of we have a maintenance budget, we have a repair budget, we have our 1% fund. It's not as if this was the only money to be spent on these buildings. This is almost a discretionary thing because of the history of things not happening and the sense by some of the selectmen that they were not able to ask for certain things to happen. And we spent a long time with what ended up being a somewhat inconvenient arrangement. We have to get together, 3 board members and 3 representatives of each town, and look at each building for a day or a couple hours for a couple of days each fall. And there hasn't apparently been a lot of muscle behind our request to have this happen. I think that's what we need to do first. We need to try a little harder to make that happen. And then if we put a lot of effort into it, it still doesn't happen, especially now that 2 selectmen here and a 3rd will know about this. I think they've been talking. Since they know of the renewed attention and interest in this, it may be a little easier. It kind of fell by the wayside in the last couple of years. And I think we won't have to worry about this amendment. We may still, if it turns out it really is such, a painful thing to go through. Cumbersome thing to go through. But I think it is good for the selectmen to be able to have their own part of the repairs and maintenance be of their initiative, and for it to be a collaborative thing, so that the board doesn't say, well, we decided that this one school gets 90,000 this year and this other school gets 10,000, without the selectmen of the 2 towns going, well, no, we could do 40, 60 on this year. So, long story short, I think we should hold this amendment for another season and either do it immediately or at least as scheduled by the lease in October to make sure that we actually do have this walkthrough this fall.
Well, I don't have a problem with that, because frankly, I don't have a dog in this hunt on this agreement. The point of the amendment was to try to get some input from the towns, because what was happening is Tony would have a meeting and no one would come. All right, and so it's a lonely meeting, because then what happens is the superintendent makes the decision, the board acts unilaterally, and that's what gets done or not done.
We've done that a couple
And that's what happens when no one comes. So what we were trying to do, number 1, was to try to get out there and get some input. And number 2, we were trying to do it so that it could be done multiple times per year, rather than an annual, once-a-year shot at this. Don would come up with a list that would change throughout the course of the year, and then he could go out and resolicit input. So the idea was that we wouldn't be waiting for the yearly meeting. We would be doing it, and that was the point of it. If everyone would rather go back to a yearly meeting, that's fine, with the understanding that if no one comes, the superintendent will unilaterally make the decisions the lease calls for. I don't have a problem with it. We were just trying to make it more flexible for the towns. We were trying to be accommodating. That's the purpose for it.
All right, so you're reporting on this and you're working on this. Mr. Lyon, do you want to be heard at all? No.
No, enough has been said.
Okay.
When can we expect some language that the board can look at?
I'm not sure you're gonna get any. I think it's dead. That would be my guess, is it's dead in the water, and we're gonna go back to the old system.
Except that we had a question just last week
We
about
have a
the
lease
$160,000.
until it's changed. What's that?
We just had this question last week about
Yes.
whether that 160 for the Washington Primary School heating system, it wasn't necessarily required by anyone other than it was adjudged by our committee as something that would be valuable to do. So we took it out of that fund. And the question is, can we do that? So I personally think we need to clarify that. I think that that language would be important to know and streamline the process. It's fine. Streamline it. I think that's what we're all aiming for, but the board needs to see the language. I think you should, get the lease committee to give us something
Mr. Kava said he's
in the
working on
next
it.
meeting.
Well, no, he didn't.
I can't give you language if there's no agreement.
He will do it when he's ready.
Without an agreement, there's no point in bringing any language. That would be a waste of your time.
Mr. Chairman, I can ask Mr. O'Leary this week to schedule a meeting with the selectmen based on the original lease, to follow the procedure there, and then we will not need an amendment. We just need to follow the original lease, and it seems that at least 2 of 3 are willing to go through the buildings. We'll find a day that works for everyone, and we'll get moving on it.
But does that avoid Mr. Brown's comment about the 3 of them meeting and going through
Well,
each
that's what
3
I'm
of
saying.
them?
That's what we're gonna do.
It could be
Okay.
like, hey,
All right.
Barbara gonna
That's
sign
the
something
original
that's-
lease.
We are going back to
Any
the
of
lease.
We're going back to the original
Trying to
lease,
get
and
it
we'll
done.
make it happen in the next couple of weeks. We'll deal with it tomorrow.
All right, well, then we'll look forward to hearing back from you at some point about that. back to distant future if possible.
We will get back to you.
Okay, 8.3, to consider if appropriate approved resolution of the board's support of Chippewa Valley Middle High School. That's got to be.
Yes, I put this in the agenda because it came up last week at the retreat, where we had a discussion about the noise about Chippewa. I did write something very briefly. I don't know if you want to take action on it, but what I wrote was, we, the Board of Education, are committed to supporting a comprehensive middle high school on the Chippewa campus to educate our students in the region. I don't know if you want to do that or not, but...
I'm sorry?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Good. I'm sorry, I'll give it over here.
No, you can.
All right, so moved and seconded. I'll read it again.
Yeah, read it again. There was no
We, the
time.
Board of Education, are committed to supporting a comprehensive middle high school on the Chippewa campus to educate our students in the region. Peter?
Well, I think that's obvious. I mean, that's what we're here for. Why, I've never heard anybody say anything. There have been comments from the public, but they're not members of the board. The board has never issued a comment relevant to not doing what we're charged to do. And I understand why this is on the table, but I don't see the need for it. I've never heard any board, ever, in 40 years, make a comment that this building is going to be gone, or the certain grades are going to be gone. I don't see its relevance. The board is committed to the best possible educational system for the staff and the students, and at the middle high school level, this is the building where it's going to be done. I've never heard anybody from this group here ever make a comment about closing this building and farming out students.
Well, it has been in the press, I mean, let's be real, it has, and it's
Well,
been
what-
suggested by some. So I guess, are you saying that the staff of the high school thinks that this would help, is necessary? Or
Well, at the retreat, we did talk about the fact that there are staff members who are nervous. Some of the board members came to me and said that, some of the staff has said that. You know, there has been a lot of press about closing Chippewa, and
some press.
some, and it's just something we discussed. I just wanted to put it there and follow what we talked about.
Can I finish?
Yes.
I had asked Pat to have you personally, as chairman of the board, who represents all of us, and I think on this issue you do, to speak to the staff members personally, that this is not an issue with the board, nor have we heard from enough members of the public who have put this concept forward. I mean, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people that may speak to this are not the driving force that would make something like this happen. I haven't heard anybody ever bring it up. And I personally think that, I understand why board members want to say this, but I don't know how you put something in concrete. I mean, I don't know what the future holds. Right now, we're dedicated to this building and the staff and the students to make it the best possible system we can. I don't know why you want to open Pandora's box myself. That's me.
Well, Brent, okay, strongly stated. I mean, just so you know, I mean, if the board wanted me to do that, I would do that, if the board wanted me to do that. Michelle?
I don't see the harm in making this statement. I don't know how much good it'll do. I hope it will help.
And we make a statement?
No, with this,
Oh, this, okay.
Voting on the motion that's on the
Yes.
table, I don't see any harm in it. I don't know if it will help the faculty feel more comfortable. If it does, I think it's worth the board doing something to just let them know that we're not discussing closing Chippewa right now, and if they need to see a vote, I don't see the harm in that.
All right, is there anything else? Kelly?
We keep hearing from the superintendent and others that we are in a crisis, that we're in a crisis situation, that we must take action, that our per pupil cost is incredibly high, that our buildings are old, and that we must move forward and make very hard choices and make big changes. I don't know.
Hold on, it didn't generate from our superintendent. Our superintendent
No,
took
I'm
over the
not
job of
saying it did.
investigating that question. It was
I
actually-
didn't say it did. I'm saying
Okay.
in general, the atmosphere that we keep hearing about is a crisis situation about very high per pupil costs, very old
Yes.
buildings, including this one. And my problem with this proposal is that I don't think we can commit to saying that we can never look at other options in this crisis situation with the very high per pupil costs we have at the middle and high school level and very drastically declining population.
It doesn't
we have.
say that you will never do it. It
I'm-
says that we
I have the
currently
floor, Jim.
support it.
I do have the floor. And with the drastically declining populations at the middle and high school level, I don't know that we can have our hands tied. And I understand the feelings of the staff. I understand the feelings of the students who love their school. But again, the situation that we've been told is that we're in a crisis for pupil spending is far, far too high. It must be brought down. We have declining population, that small classrooms just don't make it feasible to continue education at a certain level. With only 25 or 6 residents enrolling in kindergarten this year, we need to have our options open to us in the future. I also understand that feelings are involved here, and you're trying to give a boost to morale about, well, we're not going to take away something very important. But you know, there's feelings involved in a lot of the people who have come to speak to us time and again about closing their elementary schools. And we've been told, but you have to do that because it's a fiscal consideration. We have to be rational. And you know, those feelings have not been given this kind of a boost or appreciation. And yet, now we're looking at, those are residents, our taxpayers, the people we represent, the citizens who pay the bills here, the people whose children are in the school. Now you're telling us that we need to do this for the benefit of the staff, but I really believe that it's a nice idea. I understand where it's coming from in terms of morale boosting, but the picture that has been painted about the situation we're in doesn't really allow us to commit to just keeping everything the same way as it has been long term. In fact, that's why we in the long-term planning process, the one thing that came out was you cannot continue to do things the way you've done them. And I think we need to be open to having choices, all the choices that we need in the future.
Okay. Valerie.
Thank you. Well, Peter, I hope you heard the board member. We've had present board members whose opinion I respect. We've had very vocal former board members get up in public forums saying the same thing. And I do think, though we're not closing any options forever, but certainly for the time period that this board is sitting, I hope that we are endorsing keeping this facility open, these children here. There was an extremely good letter to the editor well, Emily wrote a very good letter as well. But
Let's not get into letters to
specifically-
the editor, Val, come on.
One specifically that was written to the Spectrum that addressed this. And the fact is that though this option was on the floor at one time, it was thrown out. And to tuition out kids here, to basically, we might as well dissolve
Valerie, we're not
the region.
deciding that. Come on, I don't mean to interrupt you. but-
You are. We're
Okay.
to
Well, I just
tuition
wanna
out
remind you, we're
children,
not
which is
deciding that issue.
basically the alternative, is going to destroy the district. So we're merely saying, let us endorse what we do here, which is to have a thriving middle and high school. And that we like what's going on here, and we have no intention of making any changes. Not forever, but for now.
All right, thank you. Greg?
Yeah, I think we have to be careful not to conflate the problems at the elementary level with the problems at the middle high school. They're different. The fact of the matter is we've got elementary classrooms that are fast approaching the situation in which we can't deliver an education properly, and that's why the superintendent's going to have to take steps to deal with it. But at the middle high school, it's a longer-term problem. It's not facing us as immediately as the elementary schools are. But the idea this idea that seems to be, some people seem to be suggesting that we are going to get the permission of the State Board of Education to tuition out 290 high school students is nuts. It ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen because I cannot envision the state ever doing that because of the Pandora's box it opens for the state. Because once you start doing it here, they're going to have the same pressure from everybody else in the northeast and northwest corners. And if they start letting massive numbers of people tuition students out, at some point the issue of school choice is going to bring down the education system in the state. So let's take that off the table. It isn't going to happen. The state will never permit it to happen. And I think for us to spend any time talking about it is silly. However, I think we need to let people know that that's not going to happen. Whether or not towns will re-regionalize and there will be regions, larger regions that are forced together, who knows if that will happen? That would be pressures that will be coming from a lot of people and not just us. But I think that we should support, we should clearly indicate that we have a strong vote of support for this school and for the educational mission of this school, and I think the board is committed to it. I know I am. And I think there are other ways to solve these long-term problems.
All right, but we're not getting into
that
that.
don't involve that, and I think we should vote the resolution to support the school.
Thank you. Jennifer?
I just think that when we talk about tuitioning out the high school, I worry about the agenda that brings that up. I agree that it's something that we should unfortunately have to discuss down the road, but we have the most students under this roof, and the numbers are actually directly affecting the elementary schools at the moment. So that's what we're dealing with now. But if we continue with 33 students in a graduating class in 12 years, then it is a discussion that we are going to have sooner than 12 years from now. But do I think we need to have it on the table now just because we're discussing the other options? They're two separate issues and they should be addressed separately.
Susan?
Just want to state, I do have the utmost respect for the leadership of the Chappaqua Valley Middle High School and all that's been going on under this roof. I wish I heard this kind of chorus of support for the future of Chappaqua, because when the final draft of the facilities list of the repairs and renovations for Chappaqua was presented, it was presented in a, this is the 1 to 5 year bucket, and beyond that, we don't know what's going to happen to Chappaqua.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was quite vocal and quite pointed, and there was not a chorus of all of this regarding what will happen to Chappaqua. Whenever there is uncertainty, you will get nervousness, and undoubtedly that is what is bubbling up to you, Pat, and I do feel for, I can appreciate and I feel for all those involved, but there has been very pointed statements by members of this board as to the uncertainty of Chappaqua in as few as 6 years. So we need to be very careful with what it is that we say, and we do not double speak.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer?
I think for me, the reason why we talked about doing this in 5-year increments is that I don't think it's responsible for us to ask taxpayers to ask for 20 years worth of work to be done on a building when we need to take it in small. And so for me, that's how we deal with it. And so when we're looking at 5, 8, 10 years down the road, and quite frankly, at the 6-year mark, when we're looking at a graduating class 6 years out from there for 33 graduating students, I think that is the time to have a conversation, or at least begin the conversation. God knows how long it took to have this one. So I'm just saying, the 1 to 5 year is responsible. It's asking what we're doing in increments. We're not overwhelming and asking too much of the taxpayers. It's not double talking.
We flat out said we weren't sure. The statement has been made. We don't know what's going to happen with Chappaqua.
All right, well, look, there's a motion on the floor, and I will get you out. Let me just read it one more time. We, the Board of Education, are committed to supporting a comprehensive middle high school on the Chappaqua campus to educate our students in the region.
I totally agree with this. I wouldn't be on this board if I didn't support this school and the students here and the students from K to 12, from pre-K to 12. But I think this is just a result of nerves, and I think is politically clumsy. The nerves that have been going on are because nobody knows what's going on. There are people on both sides of the referendum who are concerned, who are nervous about the outcome and about what happens after the referendum. And I think there's a lot of talk that we're hearing both personally. I'm sure that the students and teachers and administrators are hearing in this building and in other buildings. I know there's a lot of things that are happening in the newspaper. And I know myself, I say things and other people say things who are supporting the 3 schools. And they lean towards, oh, what happens to Chappaqua if we do this? And there are people who are supporting consolidations who also say, what happens to Chappaqua if we don't do this? So it's almost a little bit of, unfortunately, a political football, because both sides, from what I can hear, are using this sense of, oh my God, what will happen to Chappaqua if we do this or if we do that? So I would rather we just remember that we are here in the Chapag building, and we are entrusted to take care of this building. And as Pete said, it kind of goes without saying, but to formalize this is really kind of acquiescing to trying to micromanage the nervous reactions that everyone has to this whole situation in the first place. We can't make everybody feel comfortable, because these are very uncomfortable times. So I think rather than having these words put into our mouths, I think we just go on as we're doing. And yeah, well, there are people. All right, there are people in the paper who are saying we have to vote yes on consolidation, otherwise, in order to save in order to save Chapag. And there are people who are saying we have to vote no on consolidation, and in order to save Chapag. So either way, there are people who are making hay out of this. I would rather we just put the hay away and worry about what we have to worry about.
I don't know what you're
Well,
saying.
if I may, Alan, this may be clumsy and it may be a political football, but we are the Board of Education sitting here. Our responsibility is to the plant that we have now. If this issue is causing unrest in our high school and causing staff to leave, which has occurred, we've been informed.
They've been leaving since before this issue came up.
Okay. If this issue has caused any staff to leave or to search, I believe it is our responsibility.
The superintendent's responsibility.
Can I speak, please? I believe that's our responsibility, not the superintendent's, but ultimately it's our responsibility to be, safekeeping, keep it safe, to keep it preserved. We may not know where we're going to end up on this, but we have something in place, and we're the only thing that the staff has. You're right, it's about the staff. But we are the Board of Education. We're not the towns. We have a responsibility. That's my estimation. Kelly?
Motion to amend, to drop the word commitment, because I believe that the word commitment is the thing we can't really promise and adhere to.
Okay, well, it says, we, the Board of Education, are committed to supporting a comprehensive middle high school on the Chapag campus to educate our students in the region. We, the Board of Education, support a comprehensive middle high school on the Chapag campus to educate students?
That's what
you're
we
saying?
have now. I don't think we can commit to keeping it in the future
All
necessarily.
right, there's a motion to amend, to remove the word committed. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. I don't know if there's discussion on
Get
it.
things rolling.
There is
All right,
discussion.
discussion.
We
Or does
have,
it- do we, you know,
we
we're,
have been asked to make a commitment. What are you
we have a
looking
game
for?
starting in 10 minutes.
They're not going to win by an hour and a half.
Good for you.
And no, I'm sorry, there's a motion to amend.
Yeah, I mean, we have been asked, the whole purpose of this is to commit.
Okay.
So we should commit. We should not eliminate the language that word that counts the most. I mean, the world can end tomorrow. We don't know where it's going, but for now, we should commit.
All right, Greg?
I don't know whether the language of the amendment actually changes anything, but I kind of feel that now that we've talked this thing to death, this is one of those kinds of
What else
things
is
that it's a loss either way, because now we're at the point now where you talk about half a loaf. I mean, it's a piece of a loaf, because now we're either at the point where we vote in favor of this thing and it's got all the ringing endorsement of a vote of confidence in Parliament, in a parliamentary system, where the vote is like 21 to 20, but not much confidence. But the other side of it is we back off and withdraw it from the table, in which case, boy, did we really show lack of confidence. So I think at this point, we probably by debating it, we've killed it. But I think on balance,
It's going to be voted on.
we should probably vote it in the strongest possible terms and not water it down. And I think if we, no, obviously, I mean, is there a commitment? Of course there's a commitment. We are going to get the best education for these students, and we're going to do it here. you know, unless it becomes impossible.
Things may change.
I mean, change occurs, but I think not to be committed or to hedge on commitment is the real problem. So I
All
would
right,
vote
but we're
against
speaking to the amendment.
I would vote against the amendment.
Kelly?
There's such a dramatic difference here, and it is a political football between the verbiage that's been presented to us tonight and the fact that no one on this board's leadership would have committed to similar verbiage, saying that we commit to continuing the education of our elementary school students in their present buildings, which we maintain and which we occupy.
You're right.
So, you know, this is kind of this.
All right, is there anything else on the amendment? Can we vote on the amendment? The
Want to
amendment
repeat?
needs to remove the word, to remove committed. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, raise your hand. All those in favor of the amendment, raise your hand.
Oh, hard you
That was weird. Grammatically weird.
Okay.
Any opposed, raise your hand.
Okay.
Okay.
And you abstain.
No.
All right, so the motion to amend fails. We have the motion on the floor. Is there anything else? Alan?
Maybe I just ask, why are we doing this? I mean, do we
It's been
have
asked.
to step, I know it's been asked of us, but why are we just saying no? Because we're here to assuage the staff. The
No, it's
staff doesn't work for us.
They don't?
No.
Can I just?
Well, they don't work, no, we're not, they don't.
They don't, and you know
Come on.
that.
It's
That's
not
how this
just
works in our
staff.
policy.
It's not, I have to tell you that, we have parents who are asking what's going on. One of our staff members was at Rumsey last week and is considering bringing, their child to our school and asked our staff member whether or not Chippewa is gonna remain open. You have staff members who are very nervous. When you think about elementary position openings, we probably have about, I will lowball it, 400 applications for every opening. When you think about a science teacher in physics or a math teacher in calculus, et cetera, you have maybe one person, two people. And you have people who, we already have a counselor who left because she was worried her job was gonna be cut this year. We have a para who left because she's not full-time and she left. So it's, this is not my, I don't wanna, this was not my idea. This came up at the retreat. And I was asked to put it, I did not bring it up at the
brought it
retreat.
up. I
Val
brought it up.
at the
I
retreat.
take
I
full
did
credit.
not bring it up at the retreat.
It was printed out.
All right, okay, all right, do you have anything else?
Let me just say one other thing. If you're not gonna vote it 100%, then do me a favor, don't vote it, because we're gonna look more ridiculous to people. Just let it go. If you can't agree to be
Unanimous?
Yes, unanimous. If you can't unanimously support this very broad motion to let people know that we are not closing Chippewa in the near future, then don't even bother,
Okay,
okay?
hold on, Tony?
Don't
I'd
bother.
like to call the question.
Oh,
There's a motion to call the question, is there a second?
Second. I'll second.
No discussion on the motion to call the question. All those in favor of the motion to call the question, raise your hand.
Oh, I'm losing every vote. That's-
All those opposed, raise your hand.
God, a political force.
Okay.
Any opposed, raise your hand. All right, anything else?
Can I have a comment to
Hold on.
Pat?
I'm sorry, Michelle.
This is how the board
Michelle.
I just wanted to say that I think this is not the norm, I don't even know what proposal that's before us, but I think, there's confusion out there because of not the political football that Alan was describing, but actual letters about tuitioning out with costs and tuitions. And I think all we're doing is clarifying and saying, look, that is not the board, not on the board's table right now. Because some people just don't realize that that's not us writing those letters and putting that out there. it's not saying that it might not go on the table someday in the future, but it's not us, it's not right now. And I think this is clarifying that that discussion is not happening on the board level. Yes, the board is putting forward a referendum about closing the elementary schools. We've talked about that, it's been voted on, and that is a board discussion. I think that's all this is clarifying. So it's not really a huge political statement endorsing one side or another. It's just saying that the board is not talking about tuitioning out Chippewa right now.
Alan? Thank you, Michelle.
I totally appreciate that. I just think we're being put in a very awkward situation. If there are people coming to the superintendent with these concerns, then she can talk to the people and address the concerns and make them feel better. We don't need to have this, a board resolution on this. Anybody who has a concern, say, no, that's not the issue. And if there is a staff member or a teacher who is worried about their job next year, it should be very easy to say, no, we're not tuitioning out and closing Chippewa next year. We know that. That should be a very easy thing to do, as opposed to this. And because we did get last week a copy of a concern from the high school principal, I do appreciate that. But similarly, I just think that this precedent of our being put in this awkward situation for conversations that should be being had privately between a superintendent and her charges or the parents of the children in the region who are concerned, this can be dismissed so easily. No, we're not concerned with that right now. We have bigger fish to fry in terms of a referendum coming up on consolidation and a referendum coming up on the budget. There are a lot of people out there talking about a lot of different things. And I just don't think that this kind of precedent is very helpful.
Okay. Well, the board has not issued a statement on this issue. This would be a board statement. Okay, I understand. Valerie, then I'd like to vote on this.
Yeah, well,
Go ahead.
once again, they're not gonna win for another hour and a half. So, but this is way important. And
You're right,
the
second
thing
half,
is,
so you need to say.
I am like 2 inches from withdrawing my motion. This was my motion, but since we've talked about it so much, we're on record. I disagree with Pat. I think, Alan, please, I am talking. I think this is so important that even, obviously anyone who does not vote to support the high school, middle school through this motion should be identified. I think there'll be a majority of us who have absolutely no doubt that we are committed to the middle and the high school. So saying that we should, if we're not going to do it unanimously, we shouldn't do it at all,
There's a
is
motion
not the
before the
case.
floor. It will be voted on. Go ahead.
And, well, yeah, but I have an option of withdrawing, but I'm not going to, because it's too important. And I think we all have to stand and support the staff, the administrator, the children, go on record. This is not forever, nothing is forever, but we have to strongly support what we have here. A lot of people are looking to us for that statement, and frankly, our conversation now has gone so far down the road that if we don't vote on this, if I do withdraw my motion, we're really gonna look horrible and totally unsupportive.
All right, Kelly.
You know, I am in support of our middle and high school students and their education, just as I am in support of our elementary school students and their education. I don't think that it should be thought that anyone on this board doesn't support the best education that's viable for our children at any given moment. However, just as you can support the elementary school students not being educated in their present physical plan, there's no reason to suggest that you must commit to the physical plant at the Chippewa campus in order to effectively and excellently educate our middle and high school students. So with our elementary school students, we don't have to commit to keeping them in a certain place. But you're asking us to commit to a place. That's the problem, not the education quality, but the place. And I just don't feel we can do that. I feel we are committed, all of us, to the best education we can have our children obtain. Whether that means a certain particular building or campus, I'm not willing to commit to that. And many of you are not willing to commit to that at the elementary school level. So I don't know why it's different at the high school level.
Jim,
All right. Alan, I'm sorry, Peter?
have we tried a motion to table yet? I forgot where I am.
Yes, there was a motion.
Has there been a motion to table?
Table? No.
Oh, I put a motion on the floor to table.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to table?
Point of parliamentary, I think we found this out from the last time, that a motion to table is not what you do to get rid of something. There's a different motion, which is.
The table it. Would be a tabling the motion.
No, it's-
Tabling the
it's a-
discussion.
Right?
It's a motion, no, it's not sweep under the rug, it's close. Hang on a second, I'll find it.
Sorry, go. Hold on.
Well, that was the motion, let's not change the wording. If
The
that's
effect, what's the
motion.
effect of passing the motion to table? It can go to the end of the next meeting. It has to be considered before the next meeting.
No, I don't think that's the case. I mean, Alan made a point on this, and he was right. I checked it out, and I indicated that I told him he was right.
That's the motion Peter made, so why correct it? I
Lay on the
respect
table.
your
Because he
voice.
can't do what he wants to do. He wants to get rid of it, and he can't do it that way.
Lay on the
I
table.
put a lay on table.
No, does anybody have the bloody rules? I can't find the short version of it.
Just-
I just have my CABE meeting guide. It says lay on table.
No.
It's here. Move the table
Just
discussion.
Google
Postpone
Robert's rules
consideration
and
in
open
such a
them.
way
I
that the
am, but
motion
I'm
can be
not
taken
finding
up
the
again.
chart.
It's a mess.
What's the further?
Jim,
Yes.
right here, this is CABE's board meeting guide. It says right here, you can.
Yeah. I disagree with Alan. Alan sent me a long analysis.
Okay, I think CABE is wrong, if that's what they say, they're wrong. Because it makes it clear that you can't make it, all you can do is take it out of the agenda now, but you can't close the meeting without going back to it. That's what it says in Robert's rules. I read Robert's rules after Alan raised the point.
I think that's wrong.
And I'm going to start bringing them to the meeting, because I
You can lay it on the table, and then the board would have to vote to bring it off the table. And I think if you lay it on, you can keep it on the table for no longer till the end of the next meeting. It has to be done by the end of the next meeting. That's the motion on the table. That's my ruling. Anything further? All right, all those in favor of the motion to table, as I've explained, say aye.
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 But, I'm sorry, let's do it over. All those in favor, raise your hand. Come on, raise your hand.
Janice, okay.
Sorry, Deb.
That's okay.
I know, I never say line either.
Michelle, which way were you?
You never know.
I'm trying to,
Raise your hand, please, if you're in favor of the motion to table. Okay? All those opposed, raise your hand.
No, I don't disagree with you. I want to keep talking.
Okay.
Any abstentions, raise your hand. What's the vote?
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 in favor, 4 in favor, 5 opposed, and 1 abstained.
Okay, the motion to table fails. The original motion is before us. Is there anything else? I'll read it again. We, the Board of Education, are committed to supporting a comprehensive middle high school on the Chappaqua campus to educate our students in the region. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Okay.
Any opposed, raise your hand.
None.
Any abstained? I note that Alan has left the meeting before the vote.
Right.
All right. So is there
Chicken.
opportunity for the public to comment on the...
One more.
Oh, 8.4, what was that? Oh,
That was the last day of
That was-
school.
go
What's
ahead.
proposed
Yes.
was June 18th, and Burnham has 2 field trips scheduled, one for June 18th, one for June 19th. Field trips?
Who's go, where are they going?
Sturbridge Village on the 18th, Hartford on the 19th.
We don't want to stop that.
Okay, so then can we amend the motion to just have the last day of school be the 19th?
Is that, what day of the week is that?
Before you do that, is there something that could be done about the field trip?
Doesn't have to be.
Why are they going to the end of June?
I don't know.
It's scheduled.
I know it.
I'm sorry, do you have a problem with that, going to the 19th?
No, I was just asking if it would be an early dismissal day,
No.
because I'd be worried about when the students would get back from
No, it doesn't, we can,
It doesn't have to
Is it
be.
only one class of the school?
It's fourth grade district-wide.
Fourth grade.
All
District
schools.
wide.
I certainly will see if we can address the Hartford, because I know Sturbridge has been open for a
Yeah.
Hartford is very difficult to
well, we could, the board, if we could amend, the original motion was to make the last day of school the 18th.
There is no
for
motion.
student. Well, the original, I'm sorry.
Concept. Go ahead.
Suggestion, thank you. What we can certainly do, if the board will entertain it, is make the last day of school June 19th for students, a full day, and then on June 20th, make it a professional development day for staff.
What day of the week is that? I'm sure.
Thursday would be the 19th,
Okay.
and then the 20th, the Friday, would be a professional development day.
Your request had been the 18th and 2 professional development days.
Two, I had asked for Thursday and
Is there a way that
Friday.
just that we can do it that way, except for that class that's going away, that fourth grade class? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we have to make the
Well,
last
what-
day of school the same for all the schools?
Well,
All the
It's
students.
fourth grade district-wide.
Fourth grade
All the
district-wide.
schools are involved.
What we can do as a suggestion, Mr. Chairman, is we
You want to
can
do
hold this off until April 21st and see if the principals can get that, the Thursday trip changed.
Okay, that's fine.
And then
Good
I can
point.
come back on that day with a more succinct
I
answer.
think in general, there's support for your proposal. All right.
Yes.
Is there anything further, Michelle?
What is our last day right now?
The 20th.
Okay, we're up to the 20th.
And graduation's the 21st?
No, graduation is the 14th.
You said that already.
All
All right, so let's, opportunity for the public to comment on agenda items. Anyone want to address this, ma'am?
Sorry for your game, Jeff.
Yes, please.
By the way, it's a motion to postpone indefinitely, I just remembered it. That's the motion we're looking for.
I already lost it in my pool.
Write that down.
Carolyn Dwyer, Bridgewater. I think your resolution could have easily said, you just wanted to clarify the referendum. You didn't have to open this can of worms, and unfortunately, there's some of you still don't get the can of worms you keep opening, but you keep doing it. And anyway, you'll see how it all plays out. I hope
We'll have a vote. That's what we're about.
That's
having a
right,
vote.
that's right, we will. And then I hope in 30 days, or whenever this is done, that all options will be on deck. Because I don't think we can say it's going to be in 6 years or 5 years. All options from the Long Range Planning Committee have to come back, because we're in a crisis, and we've been told that for 2 years. The interesting thing, Pat, you mentioned today about the Rumsey student feeling unsettled before they come here. That's what we've been hearing about the elementary schools forever. So again, just confirming, we look forward to this being settled, so the same parents that want to send their kids to elementary can do that. And then I guess on the 30th, should we ask for the same resolution you guys passed tonight for the elementary schools? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, is there a motion? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Good evening, Carrie Kelly at Roxbury. And forgive me, I'm not sure if we can only comment on agenda items. Is that?
Well, it was a pretty broad agenda. Go ahead. If you're off
I
base,
was
I'll
late,
tell you.
so I don't know the whole agenda. and I
Go ahead.
apologize. The first thing I wanted to speak to is I did walk in time for this whole can of worms, as Carolyn had mentioned. But I just want to comment that I think a lot of the confusion came from, and I can personally speak, that I did experience it. A lot of this tuitioning out noise happened because we were here at a Board of Ed called meeting, and a resident was passing out paperwork about tuitioning out. So if you were an attendee and you're being handed pamphlets at a Board of Ed meeting, public meeting, you have to think that that's where it's coming from. Even though I realize, as an intelligent individual, that's not where it came from. But I'm just one of a large public that did receive that handout at that public meeting in the high school auditorium. So there is a misguided path.
There's little the board can do to stop that.
Understood.
Nor should it be stopped.
I'm not pointing fingers, that is your fault. I'm just saying that that's a lot of people's misconception, is because it happened at a Board of Ed public
Okay.
meeting, that's where the information came from. So I just wanted to put that out there. And just as a Roxbury resident, I just wanted to comment on the fact that there's been a lot of noise in the paper about not having a school in your town. And I just have to say, like, I've been here 17 years and I've never had anybody say to me, oh, you don't have a high school? Or look at my son's school, you don't have a middle school? We do have a school. It's here at Chippewa. You know, that's our school. And its physical location really doesn't matter. That's not what makes it ours. It's because we belong here. So I just wanted to put that up to the.
Excuse me, what's your name again?
Carrie Miller.
Love your letter. Love your
All right,
letter.
all right. Thank you very much. Is that it?
And I just wanted to also just wrap it up with, you know, I guess I'm talking to the whole board, but I guess I'm specifically speaking to my Roxbury reps that ultimately we don't know how the referendum is going to end, but if it does, that Roxbury is first consolidation, are you guys then, when we go to the next step, going to back us with that, if that is the majority? I just wanted to put that out to you guys.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing no one else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you all.